One big team, one big team, one big team.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 57 of Riot Act, the alternative music podcast with myself, Stephen Hill, and my co-host, Mr. Renfrey Deadman,
Hello.
who sits to my left if you are watching on the YouTubes.
Yeah, but if you're watching on the YouTubes, I'll be on the right. But I do still sit to your left.
You still sit to my left.
It's all very confusing.
That's a fact. Yeah, well, it is, isn't it?
Left and right, it's very
time
confusing.
And physics.
Space.
And space. And the perception of what is real and what isn't real, which seems rather apt for what we're going to be doing this week. Coming up later on the show, we are going to be reviewing new albums from Hugar, Black Futures, and Entombed AD.
And that's it, isn't
put
it?
all of those bands first because they deserve just a little bit of credit, because the poor bastards have released an album the same week as Tool finally release their new record.
Oh.
So obviously we will be talking about that quite extensively. And I'm going to just say straight off the bat, we've dropped out Trade-Off because we know that this will probably be, not even probably, this will undoubtedly be the longest album review we've done.
I would be stunned if it isn't.
And it might be for another 13 years.
May well be. Yeah.
Unless there's a new... What could conceivably be bigger than a new Tool album in our world? Like a new Led Zeppelin album?
Oh, but that's not going to happen, is it?
Well, no, it's not. But I'm trying to think of something which you could conceive of.
I don't think a new Led Zeppelin album would be either, because it probably wouldn't be very good. No, I think it's, I don't know, maybe if Nine Inch Nails did another double album. That doesn't seem likely.
Okay, before we kick on, obviously we want to say a big thank you to Musicism. Go to musicism.net and they will provide you with online tutorials so you can be the next Adam Jones or the next Maynard James Keenan.
I shouldn't laugh, like maybe. You never know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
Sorry.
It's for $9.99 a month. You know, it could happen. And then you'll think, what a bloody bargain, especially if you put in the code RIOT in the checkout, in capitals, you get 25% off, and you are fucking laughing. What an absolute bargain. And then you can take decades between albums if you're good enough.
Yeah. There you go.
So that's that. Also, go to patreon.com/Riot Act podcast. Me and Renfrew were just having a conversation before we started about how we're going to start doing Rioters reviews again real soon.
Yeah.
Real soon.
Yeah, our lives are slowly getting back to normal-ish.
Yeah.
Just about. So we're going to start actually redoing these Rioters reviews, because it's been a long while since we talked about those sorts of records.
We appreciate your patience. There is
thank you.
15, 16 of them up already. For people that haven't signed up and are interested in more
Something like that.
content from us,
Yeah.
then you can go over there and just pledge £1 a month and you will get all of that straight away. And we're going to start adding to it probably quite quickly, I think.
Yeah.
We should probably try and go bang, 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 bang and put a few out all at once.
Yeah. We have plans.
Good idea. So that's good. Okay, right. Before we start talking about the big news, which is the Tool album, we should talk about something which has just happened, dropped a few days ago, which is the Antwerp have been, who you love. You weren't here when I did the Reading review, the
Download review.
The download review.
I wasn't. I listened to it.
Yeah. I would have liked to have talked to you about the Antwerp at download and the sort of the bizarre response.
Do you want to do a really brief talk about it?
I just thought it was really weird. It was sort of funny. It was like watching sort of 2 Unlimited play at download. Okay. Do you know what I mean? But quite aggressive and a bit sort of pikey. But I don't know. I actually sort of weirdly, I did enjoy it.
Okay.
I enjoyed seeing some people's faces, but then some people did seem to be having a really good time. It was one of those polarizing festival sets.
Was it ironic love, though, do you think?
No, I don't think it was. I think people genuinely liked it. I think when their songs are good, they're really good. When they're not very good, they're pretty bad.
I mean, you've not shown me any examples of when they're good, unfortunately, but there we go.
There's a few decent ones on that album. Fatty Boom Boom and Fatty Boom Boom, hit me when I ding ding.
I mean, we've been over this.
Yeah,
and I disagree.
There's no point, is there? Flogging a dead horse. But it may be a while before you see the Antwerp at a festival again. They've just been dropped from the bill at Riot Fest to go along with the fact they've actually the second festival they were dropped from. They also dropped from Life,
which is a hugely Riot Fest is a hugely significant festival. We should say. I mean, Riot Fest was where Misfits came back.
Yeah, Jawbreaker did their first shows back there as well. They get some, I think they had Slayer playing Rain Blood recently. They get some big acts playing albums
Well,
in full.
not only big, but they just get some really cool sets.
Yeah.
Like they just
Flaming
get
Lips
some.
doing the Soft Bulletin a few years ago.
Yeah. It's wicked.
Yeah, really looks like a really, really good festival. They had Rob Zombie doing Astro Creep in full, and that didn't even appear to be
It's
a
fucking
thing.
wicked.
Amazing. That's so great. So yeah, I've always fancied going to Riot Fest, but if you do go to Riot Fest and you are going to Riot Fest, The Antwerp won't be playing. They've been dropped from the bill after allegations of homophobic abuse, which stem back to a video that was recorded in 2012, which shows Ninja spitting in the face of a gentleman called Andy Butler from Love Affair backstage at a festival in Australia. So they're not going to be playing this now. Now, this is not... there's a precedent for stuff like this happening before. My mind immediately turns to Phil Anselmo, who was dropped from
Lots of things.
Basically, an entire European tour. With Down back in sort of 2000 and what was it, early 2016, I believe, when Phil
Something like
Anselmo
that.
Was caught.
Yeah, because Dime Bash was December, wasn't
doing
it?
the Dime Bash, doing the sort of the white power, white wine incident, which we don't really need to go over. I'm sure everybody knows what we're talking about. It's on the internet if we don't. And he lost a lot of, basically a whole tour because of that incident.
I mean,
And he's still not really fully recovered from it.
I don't think he's fully recovered. It is interesting that a lot of areas of the metal press have decided to just ignore it now, and I don't think that, I don't think he has fully recovered at all. I think there's a lot of people. I certainly don't listen to Pantera as much as I used to. I still do because I'm entitled to. Vinnie Paul, Dimebag Darrell, Rex Brown. But it certainly swayed me slightly because obviously, Phil's the mouthpiece of that band as well. So it is going to make a bit of a difference, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This Diantwood stuff is, basically the video came from their ex-tour manager. Who's said quite a few things in the past regarding, who's actually released quite a few videos. And, it's a difficult one. I mean, whatever happened, I think it's clear that Ninja spat in a man's face.
Yeah.
Which, is pretty shit.
You might lose your job for it, though.
Depends who you spit in the face.
If you're working at McDonald's and they found out that you spat in someone's face 7 years ago, and not at that job, you wouldn't get fired.
No, but it is very different, isn't it? Because
it doesn't have to. I mean, it's different because it's different, but the moral, Go on, you continue. I'm about to go into one.
Well, a festival, musicians are effectively getting, if you want to look at it in that respect, they're getting lots of little jobs all the time through different management companies and different people who are willing to put them on or not. And I do think it is up to the individual festivals. If they then decide we don't want to have you on because we don't think this is kosher and this is a good message to spread or whatever, I think it's within their right to not put them on if that's the case, if they want to do that. I mean,
Be very careful about who they then don't book, aren't they? They've got to be very careful. I mean, Riot Fest is where the Misfits reformed. There are many a story and many a YouTube video doing the rounds with Glenn Danzig behaving in pretty fucking despicable ways. Do you think they would have cancelled the Misfits if someone had pointed them in the direction of one of the many videos of Glenn Danzig being a dick to security or sound engineers or members of support bands that you can see on YouTube?
I don't know I don't know these videos that you're referring to, so I think it depends on the nature of the crime, the nature of what's happened. What is undeniable is Ninja spat in some guy's face. The accusations are ninja spat in some guy's face after Yolanda pretended that this gay man had touched her up in a toilet. Now, we can't confirm that 100% because, you know...
We can't confirm or deny that 1%. Let's be real about it. Like, we don't know. We haven't got...
No, we don't know, but that is the accusation that's been put out there, and... If it's an ex-tour manager, I mean, maybe he was treated like shit and he wants revenge, but it's an odd thing to make up, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an odd... I mean, it is an odd thing to make up, but hey, people do fucking weird shit, don't they, when they're disgruntled.
Yeah.
But then they also become disgruntled because of terrible things. So it's very difficult in this situation to know what the sort of the right thing to do is. My kind of problem with it is that, like I said, I don't think... See, what's happening right now, and I'm getting a bit bored. I have to say I'm getting very, very bored of this idea that, you know, if you do anything wrong and you're an actor or you're a footballer or you're a musician or you're in the public eye in any way, that you then shouldn't be allowed to do that thing anymore. And they're saying, well, look, you know, you're a role model, you're this, you're like, you people, you think you're above the law, you've been put on a pedestal. My argument to that is, by not letting those people do those jobs, you are then putting them on that pedestal. You wouldn't say to a milkman, if a milkman went to jail for if you spat in someone's face, right, and it got reported to the police and it was taken up and charged with arrest, you're going to get what? Probably at worst, a fine, a suspended sentence. You're not going to go to prison for it. You'll probably have some sort of criminal record. That will not stop you gainfully being employed or making money or getting on with your life nearly a decade later. It won't stop you doing that, right? So my argument is, if you don't want these musicians and artists and actors and sports people to be on a pedestal, don't put their job on a pedestal. Don't say only people that are morally sound can do this. Because if you just let them be like everybody else, you know, this whole like it's one rule for them and it's another rule. Well, yeah, you're making... The flip has gone completely the other way. Like, no one wants to see Vince Neil not go to prison for more... Like, Vince Neil killed a dude and he went to prison for like, what was it?
Like
6
a few
months?
days.
Yeah, like a couple of months.
Ridiculous.
Like, that's mad.
Yeah.
But then to completely shift it the other way, like... For someone like, you know, Louis C.K., for example, the comedian Louis C.K. has had gigs in this country cancelled. And that's not down to the club cancelling it. That's down to the pressures from outside of people saying, I don't want Louis C.K. to be playing. And that's fine, right? Louis C.K. did something that you don't like. You shouldn't don't go and see him anymore. But the idea that no one else can go and see him anymore because morally this is better for that, like, I just don't think it's right. I just think what you're doing is you're turning comedians, actors, sports people, musicians, you're turning them into the very thing that you don't want them to be, which is above normal people. I
mean, going back to that, you know, we shouldn't be putting people on pedestals thing. I'd like to agree with that. In fact, I do agree with that. But we live in a celebrity culture, and that's, you know, I mean, that's a byproduct of that.
These people as celebrities, you know, there are people who will be on Twitter or Instagram or whatever going, oh, I stan this person. Oh, I love like the queen of this. And then the second anyone does anything wrong, it's like, you are dead. That is the end of it. And those kind of extreme, this person is either a god who cannot be questioned or touched or, you know, spoken ill of in any way whatsoever. Look at like the BTS army. Those people are fucking crazy, right? They're fucking crazy. Like the people who go to that cult that 30 Seconds to Mars had recently. You see shit like that and you go, okay, well, you are that upset. But what if you found out that Jared Leto had done something really, really, like, not even really terrible, pretty terrible? Like,
I think a lot of people would say he's hashtag cancelled because they want him to be cancelled.
Of course they would. And it's like, everything's got to fucking mean something. Someone can't just have a fight now. Someone in a band can't just have a fight. It's got to be looked at, what does this mean? What does this say? What is this? But like, sometimes things just are what they are. He got into a fight backstage with some dude. He probably used some inappropriate language. He probably did something shitty. It was 7 years ago. Just fucking just fucking move on. I'm just bored. I just hate all this shit.
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I think that like something that you were just saying there is like on the internet, it has to either be they're the worst person ever or the best person ever. And I would actually take that and run with that as the problem. The issue for me is there aren't different degrees of because the internet is just like, or it certainly feels like it's just a shameful kind of publicly shame this person because they did this thing. There aren't any degrees of of how bad a crime is. It's just whether it's, I don't know. Now none of these things I'm supporting, but whether it's getting your privates out over Skype or raping somebody, it seems to be that the punishment is the same, and I think that's wrong. In terms of I suppose I'm coming from this as someone who doesn't really like them. So
yeah, I think shit like that obviously does play a big part.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is the reason. So before we did the trade-off, I never properly heard Diane Wood at all. And listening to the album, and I mentioned it a little bit. I mean, I wasn't like, oh, I bet these guys hate gay people or anything like that. But listening to the album, it did make me feel really uncomfortable because I did think, I can't believe this shit is actually out there. And songs like, and I did mention it, that song with Yolanda on the record exec's lap thing. I did feel that was an extremely poor taste, to be totally honest. And so, and there are other accusations as well. There's a rapper who's come out from Australia or New Zealand. I apologize, I've completely forgotten. I'm going to have to paraphrase this a little bit, but she's got all sorts. She's released a video which talks about, which actually shows correspondence between her and Ninja and how it's, and it flashes up all of these images, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of images of correspondence of shitty things that he has said to her and the way that she's been treated and all of that stuff. Now, that stuff can be faked, but if you watch the video, it's a hell of a lot of effort to go to do that. And, no smoke without fire. I mean, I am not going to sit here and go, Ninja definitely did this thing, Yolanda definitely did that thing, whatever. What I will very happily sit here and say is they seem like really fucking dodgy people and I don't like them at all.
Yeah.
And I based that on listening to the record, one album alone. They left a sour taste in my mouth. And obviously they don't for millions of other people, but they fucking did for me. I was I think that's sick.
That's fine, but you're not advocating that they should not be allowed to do anything. Do you know what I mean? Or are you?
No.
Are you saying that, like, I don't like this, ergo none of you should be allowed? Not even none of you should be allowed to listen to it. I
think Riot Fest have a right to say we don't want you to play this festival anymore. I don't think, realistically, I don't think their career will be ruined as a result of this. They may lose a few. I mean, look at Phil Anselmo. Look at fucking Michael Jackson. We were talking about Michael Jackson earlier this year because of the documentary that came out. I did a little experiment. I was curious to see how many monthly listens he'd go down by as a result of the documentary. And it went from something like 29 million on Spotify to 28 million over the month that the documentary came out. There are a lot of people who do care about this shit, but in the main, and I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, I'm just pointing it out as a fact. In the main, people don't really seem to care. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But the loudest voices are the ones who think it's repugnant and think people should be cancelled and so on and so forth.
I mean, it annoys me because I'm sitting here basically feeling like I'm sticking up for people who have obviously done something, which is, I don't think you should spit in people's faces under any circumstances. I don't think that. But at the same time, it's like, I've been spat at some before. I've been, people get in fights and things happen, and you can't expect life and everyone to go through life being perfect all the time. You just can't.
Of course not.
You just can't. And I just think it's got to the point where...
But it'd be nice for those people to be punished for doing shit things. and whether that punishment should be you're off this festival now or not.
The thing is,
Probably not. I don't know.
If Riot Fest looked at that and went, "Oh, you ain't playing," like, or listened to him and went, "Do you know what? Fuck you. We don't want you playing." Like, that's fine. But I get the feeling that, I mean, I don't know, but I get the feeling that it was more to do with public pressures. Because there's been a public pressure building to it. And I do think that, you know, businesses and companies will cave at any vague sight of, like, you know, controversy. They're like, oh shit, no, just take the controversy away. That's their default setting. Whereas art, I think it will get artists and people in the public eye. Like, I watched Dave Chappelle's new Netflix stand-up special yesterday.
Yeah. And
he was called transphobic from his last one.
Right.
And so rather than apologise, which, you know, I watched Aziz Ansari, who does a really lovely apology about, hey, you know, I did the thing and you know, and he apologised for it. And that's cool. And that's really nice. And it felt very heartfelt. But the flip of that is Dave Chappelle going, well, then I'll do more jokes about you and they'll be even more horrible.
Right.
And I just think you are not going to change. If somebody's homophobic, you aren't going to stop them from being homophobic by going, right, I'm taking all your stuff away. You're not going to do that.
No,
That's not how that shit works. It just doesn't.
I'd also understand if I was putting a festival on. I'd also understand why you'd then turn around and go, I don't want them to have a festival.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. I can understand that as well. But, I mean, this is a sort of a broader point. Whereas if, like, you just go, we ruin them and we take away everything. That isn't going to make them better. But I think I said it before. Like, you're not rehabilitating people. You're just destroying them. Every time Ian Watkins is there's a story about Ian Watkins on Metal Hammer. The comments on Facebook talk about how they'd love to see him be, like, anally butchered with a knife. And they're going, he's a sicko, I'd love to stick a knife up his ass. And it's like, well, I'm not being funny, but if you think a normal... I
probably shouldn't laugh at that, but it is funny.
If you're getting some sort of perverse pleasure at the idea of mutilating another human being,
who's the sicko?
I would suggest that you probably have some sort of odd tendencies as well.
I mean, look, there's a difference between saying something and doing it.
Yeah, of course there is. Of course.
So, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, you know, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I don't think this is going to make dive go away at all. But it may affect their summer for 1 month or so. For one year or something like that. I don't think that's a just punishment either. I think the punishment should be what you or I would get for spitting in someone's face. But unfortunately, that's not the way celebrity works, and it sucks.
There's so many. I mean, we could sit here and talk for
hours about
various different things where I go, that doesn't make sense. Just none of this actually, what you're saying and this righteous indignation doesn't actually make sense. And one of them was like, I saw people gave Caroline Flack was openly going out with Harry Styles from One Direction. Right, she was like 32 and he was 17, and people were like remembered that recently and went, "Oh my god, she's a paedophile." And it's like, well, the legal age of consent in this country is 16. So you can think it's weird or whatever. You can, if you want to think, like, it is a bit weird. It's like 32. Caroline Flack is, you know, I've already said about what I think about Caroline Flack on the show before. She's awful. But you can't have much of, you know, we can't call the police.
No, not in that case.
You can't do anything about that.
No.
It's just, you can just go, something a bit weird about that. Yeah. That is as much as you can possibly do.
And calling her a paedophile is also technically incorrect.
Yeah, it's so wrong.
Because that's not what paedophile means.
And even if you did think that that's what a paedophile was, the law disagrees with you, I'm afraid. Now you can say, hey, the law doesn't think that in certain parts of America, and it doesn't. It's like, well, yeah.
But this is the difficult.
This
is the difficult thing about putting black and white lines on grey areas. You know, all of this is grey areas because different people, mature at different ages and blah 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 blah. But then at the same time, you got to do something. You've got to put some sort of law in place, otherwise.
Well, yeah, you have got to put some sort of law in place. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a hard one.
And you either go, yeah, well, I accept the law, or you go, no, I've made up my own laws, and it is that 17-year-old boys shouldn't be allowed to go out with 32-year-old women, and that is in my. I've decided that's what it means. But then you just sound like some sort of weird, like vigilante, pedo. Like I don't even know what the rest of that sentence is, but like, do you know
That's
what I
a
mean?
shame, because
Yeah.
leaving it a vigilante pedo is not great.
Vigilante pedo slayer. Like, do you know what I mean?
God. All right, cool. I hope we don't get complaints this week. We probably will. It's fine. Hey.
Hey, do you know what? I relish the discussion.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that anymore. Let's move on and do some reviews. This is a weird sentence, as the snowballs form in hell and as a pig flies past my window. We are about to talk about the 5th studio album by the American rock band Tool.
Tool.
Who
Don't know them.
They used to be big in the 90s.
They're pretty damn big now. If we look at the old Spotify streams and so on and so forth, they've broken a lot of records.
It seems kind of weird for me to even be normally I go, this is the 5th album, it's the last one since, you know the story by now, since 10,000 Days came out. We have waited 13 years, over 13 years in fact, for its successor. It has been the single most anticipated record in my lifetime ever, I would say, for me personally.
Oh, okay. I can't argue with that then.
No. And I would say, in terms of column inches and the amount of stuff written about it, it's kind of its legacy and its the mystery surrounding it. It sits with the Chinese democracy.
Yeah, the Chinese democracy was the one I was going to bring up.
The kind of obvious one.
Chinese democracy was 14 years. This is 13 years. Almost the same, you know. So yeah.
There are others. Second Coming of the Stone Roses, although that
was like 5,
like a
wasn't
feeble 5 years. Like, that's fucking small change.
Was it 5? 89, 96?
95.
Was it 95? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
All
so
right, 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years. A feeble 6 years.
Well, I mean, Tool album cycles between Enema, Lateralis, 10,000 Days was 5 years. So, yeah, for the first sort of 4.5 years, it was like, oh, this is normal, it's fine. And then it just kept going and going and going and going. And then it emerged. Yeah.
To the point where we've spoken about this record many times. I've spoken about this record on the old Metal Hammer podcast to give you some idea of how fucking long we've been waiting for this record. Talking about it as if it might be coming out soon. And that's going back to 2011, 2012. I've spoken about it on Team Rock. I've spoken about it on various other podcasts, and everything that I've done pretty much. Every year, I get asked by Metal Hammer to write a preview of the year and what is going to be the thing that we're most looking forward to. And every year, literally every year since I've been writing for that magazine, which goes back to, like I say, 2012, 2013 now, it's been this record.
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it?
So, you're really disappointed?
So here it is. Well, here's the thing I think we should say first, and we did say it a couple of weeks ago. Can anything live up to that? Could anything live up to that?
Well, why don't we bring in how we heard the record?
Don't fudge the question, Rem. You've got to answer the question.
I was going to answer the question through that.
Okay. Fine. All right. So let's talk about how we heard it.
So it's a very old school way of listening to records, and it came from, I believe, the first album to ever do it was Audioslave.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I believe it was. So basically, as journalists, we have to secretly, pretend we've not heard it, although you've not been doing that brilliantly.
Hey, come on.
No, it's been very good. No one guessed. And we go into the offices of the record label, in this case, Sony, and sit down and listen to the album very loud with...
Wow. You jumped quite a few bits.
I apologise. Go on. No, go on.
What you do is you go there and you are given a massive piece of paper with lots of words on it that all have must not, will not, you may not, this may. Lots of things going tick to say that you ain't going to do this, tick to say that you ain't going to do that, tick to say that you're going to shut your fucking face. Then that you are stripped of all your possessions.
I'm the reason I missed that out actually is because I didn't actually get this, but then I heard the record much later than you did, and I think they got to the point where they were like, "Oh, I just don't care anymore."
Right. Okay.
To be honest.
So I was.
But yeah, you heard it quite a bit earlier.
Yeah,
than I
I
did.
was stripped of my possessions. Well, my phone. Actually, second time.
You make it sound really melodramatic.
Yeah.
I was stripped of all of my worldly possessions.
No, they took my phone and actually my bag as well. And the second
bag.
time I
Deary
went,
me.
do you want me the bag? Do you want me to give you back the bag? And the girl went, oh no, you can keep the bag. And
She'd
I was
already
like-
snaffled
I
what she
went,
wanted from it.
Don't worry, I've only got my iPad and my my like portable Wi-Fi and my video camera, and like, so it'll be fine. I had a little joke, and
then
yeah.
they mobbed you, didn't they?
yeah, and then I was held down. I was in
And electrocuted.
custody for about the same time as you would get for spitting in someone's face, which is why I won't be performing at Riot Fest this year.
That was a hell of a way to break it to me.
And and then you go and sit in a room with some plush sofas, and weird with the Tool album as well because you got like coffee and crisps and snacks, which were like you were in here for a while was the implication.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and sat on a sofa, and various members of the press turned up and enjoyed it in various different ways. One particularly prominent member of the press, who I shan't name and shame, read a book for the first half of the album and then fell asleep, but still found enough in that meagre period of time to give it a 5 out of 5 review in the publication that they write for. And I won't say any more than that. But hey, it's not for me to say how people do their job. Anyway, so that's how you hear it. Yeah.
Yes. And going back to your original question, I got to hear it twice like that. You got to hear it 3 times. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In those circumstances. Now, like listening to a new Tool album, I mean, there was a review somewhere which basically started by saying, you never listen to a Tool song for the first time because there's so much to take in. You can't really, you can't process it all. And I think if I'd only had 2 listens, if I'd only been able to listen to this record 2 times, it would be quite a different review. And so I think the first couple of times you hear it, there is this sense of like, is this really worth 13 years wait? But the truth is Tool albums, more so than the majority of music, I will say, not all of it, but the majority of music are things that you need to live with properly for a long time. Things that you have to go back to over and over again. And I mean, I should
It
say,
almost feels too premature for us to be reviewing it right now.
it really does,
To be
actually.
perfectly honest.
It really does. And, I think I can say this because it's happened and it's public knowledge. It's basically the album has leaked since then in order to do a better job for you guys. We have, been able to listen to it more so as a result of that, as have thousands and millions of people. And I'm really pleased because I've probably only listened to it an additional 5 or 6 times. But that means I've listened to it 8 times overall rather than 2 times. And my opinion of it now is very, very different on the 8th listen than it is on the 2nd listen.
I think I've listened to it 8 times now.
Yeah. So it's a shame. I understand why they do that. They want to. Tool are a very mysterious band. They want to keep the secrecy. They want to keep it up for as long as they possibly can. But if there's any album that you don't want to do it with, it's a Tool record, probably. So it is kind of irritating, although I understand it at the same time. I understand why they do it. I think on first listen, I wasn't disappointed at all. But as you say, can anything live up to 13 years? Not on one listen, it can't. No. But on multiple listens, over and over and over and over, maybe. Maybe.
I sat there in that. It was so the first time I listened to it, because someone did actually tweet us and say, "Can you give us the exact?" Like, they kind of wanted the specifics. So, first time I listened to it, there was me, 2 members of the Belgian Tool fan club.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
And it would seem nice enough. And Tool's manager.
Oh, right.
We're in the room. And there's like 8 sofas in there.
Mm-hmm.
Big fucking sofas. Like really plush, nice office. And it was played at ear-splitting volume.
Mm-hmm.
Really loud. And when
As requested by the band, I
requested
believe.
by the band, yeah. And I have to say, due to the length of time that I'd waited for it, due to my anticipation for it, and due to the fact that it's quite a stirring opening, I think, you know, at this point, even as we sit, I mean, obviously, I would have thought most people have listened to it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're probably going to listen to that before you listen to us talk about it, I would imagine.
You should do.
So, yeah. You should. So, Fear Inoculum, the title track, which starts with this guitar, which kind of sounds like a cello. I did actually think it was, you know, some sort of based cello instrument.
No, it's a guitar with a, I want to say a phaser effect. I'm not sure if that's right. But yeah, it's a guitar with an effect on it. But yeah.
When that came in, at that volume, in that room, I got like goosebumps come
Right.
up. Because I was just like, oh my fucking God, it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people will know that you know, that's a great song. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, it sounds like Tool.
Yeah.
And for me, at that point, just Tool sounding like Tool was thrilling enough. My initial burst of like, oh my fucking God, that I was just completely like aghast. Like, oh fuck, it's happening. This is new Tool music.
That's
like,
a
and
key
that
thing to
stuck
say.
with me for quite a long time.
That's a key thing to say, actually, because just taking another example of an album which took forever, which we've briefly mentioned, when Chinese Democracy came out, it didn't sound like a new Guns N' Roses album. It sounded like an incredibly extravagant Axl solo album.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to wait all this time and then go, oh yeah, that's Tool, and there are imitators, but none of them do it as well. And yeah, I mean, yeah, this is a Tool album, state the obvious, but it really sounds like it as well, and that's very encouraging. But it is different, isn't it?
Yeah, there are bits and bobs that are different. I mean, I would say that this is, you know, to kind of get into the proper sort of meat of the records. This is, it feels like a consolidation rather than to me, this feels like a consolidation of Tool. Like, it feels like, you know, when bands strip stuff away and you go, well, they've really trimmed the fat.
Yeah.
They've added the fat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of fat and a lot of meat to this record. And not in a bad way, because I don't think they're really capable of fucking things up to that extent. But they clearly know exactly who they are. And I think one of the things I said to you is, when you listen to 10,000 Days and you'd waited 6 years for it, you sort of listened to it and you thought, oh, well, what have they been doing in that 6-year period? Listening to Meshuggah a little bit. Do you know what I mean? They've clearly there was that polyrhythmic Meshuggah, you know, metal influence in 10,000 Days.
Yeah, I think that's a little harsh on 10,000 Days, but okay, fine.
Straight away, you go, oh, I wonder what influences they have taken to kind of progress their music in that time period. And the most obvious one on 10,000 Days is Meshuggah.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I've never thought about it, but yeah, probably. Yeah.
Whereas with this one, I was like, I wonder what they've been listening to in the last 13 years. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of little. And it would appear that what they've been listening to is more Tool. Do you know what I mean? They've been listening to themselves.
I put it to you, Steve, that your favourite band of all time are playing a joke on you by releasing a post-rock album. Tool have just released a Rent-Free Core record. Yes, they have.
Well,
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
Why?
Because everything about it is fits in line with post-rock albums. So you've got 6 very long songs, all over 10 minutes long. You don't have there aren't traditional song structures at all. The majority of the songs, almost all of them, probably bar tempest or sevenpest. We'll get to that. Build upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. These are all characteristics of post-rock. I am not saying...
They're also characteristics of Tool.
Less so than post-rock.
And prog rock as well. I mean, I think it owes as much to King Crimson or Pink Floyd's as it does, Talk Talk or Mogwai.
I think Tool...
I think the balance is pretty...
I think Tool as a whole do. I'm not sure if I would say that specifically with this record, but I mean, I'm partly saying it partly to annoy you, but I do also genuinely think
it's not annoying. I mean, that's kind of what they are. I don't think sort of prog rock. They're comfortable bedfellows.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, I mean, this is an album full of, if we're going to use 10,000 Days as this is an album full of Wings for Marie songs or Reflection or maybe even Third Eye. I mean, Third Eye is probably more the last song, which we'll get onto, but it's whereas Tool used to do one or two, maybe three maximum songs, which had this kind of length and this epicness and this, what I'm going to call post-rock quality to them. You could argue it's proggy as well, and that wouldn't be incorrect, but it seems very post-rocky to me. They have now basically written a whole album of that.
Yeah.
So I think there is a difference. And when you say it's a consolidation of Tool's music and their discography, because you said that to me before I'd heard it, and I think there are changes. I just think they're very subtle and they come across more... I think it comes down to this being an album of reflections. And I'm talking about the song Reflection on... it is Reflection, isn't it? The really, really long one on Lateralis. It's... I mean, that's a song which is about 3 minutes long and Maynard's... it's 11 minutes long and Maynard's vocal doesn't come in for 3 minutes. And loads of these songs are like that. Loads of these songs have this thing where they build and build and build and the very first riff you hear ends up being the very last riff you hear, except it's suddenly built to something which is way beyond what you could have comprehended when you first heard it. And I think when I first heard it, I was a little bit surprised that they had effectively taken the same... albeit unusual song structure for every song on the record, bar one, probably.
Yes.
But listening to it more, I think it's done so masterfully and so brilliantly, and it corresponds so well with stuff that I like anyway, that is now null and void.
Yeah.
But that was an initial kind of like,
Do you want to? Yeah. Should we talk about our initial thoughts? Because so my initial two listens happened back to back. I went in for a day. There was a listening party.
Same with mine.
Two people, and I just stayed in the room and went, I'm going to stay and listen to it again.
Yep.
So I listened to it back to back twice over a sort of 3.5 hour period. And
it's exhausting, isn't it?
It
was so exhausting doing it that way.
YouTube, I made this amount of notes about it. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages, 9.5 pages of notes for the record on that two listening period and that listening period of double back to back this record.
I made an A4 page of for each song worth of notes.
Yeah, and I think while you're scribbling along, listening to these songs, I came out of it being like, wow, Tool, aren't they great? They're so great. They're so brilliant. And I kind of walked out feeling more impressed than emotionally invested in it.
Yeah.
So I went out and I thought, it's a bit shitty. Like, I wouldn't listen unless I was, obviously I do have to write notes down when I'm reviewing albums, but I want it to be really, really short. So I was like, do you mind if I come back tomorrow and let's do it again? Because I want to get this just right. And I thought the next day I'm going to come back. I'm not going to bring my book with me. I'm not going to write any notes. I'm just going to sit there. I'm going to stare up at the sky and
Just listen,
on
yeah.
the ceiling, and I'm just going to
Take it in.
and take
Yeah.
it all in,
Yeah.
which is quite difficult because I had Dan P. Carter from the Radio 1 Rock Show offering me peanuts next to me, but which I appreciate, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
appreciate the offer, but yeah, I was sort of trying to zone out a little bit, and I had Phil Wilding from Prog Magazine going, like pulling funny, going, "Is that it?" after every song as well. So it was quite hard to do that, but I sat there and I listened to it all, and I didn't make any notes, and I just tried to let it take me, and that's when it got me. It properly got me.
Agreed. That's the thing. The manner in which they effectively asked us to listen to this album is not how people listen to records, which is basically what you were just said. But you know, that is not. You know, you don't sit down and take notes. You just I remember when I listened to 10,000 Days for the first time, I just locked myself in my room and lay on my bed and just...
I did.
You know,
I turned the lights off. I was like, get out, fucking everyone.
Yeah. Let the whole thing sweep over me. And once you do that...
I've gone out like I got loads of people in my bed in 2006.
Once you do that, I think the emotional impact of the record comes through, because my first listen, I was so busy concentrating on whoa, polyrhythms. Oh, they're using 7 a lot. Oh, Danny Carey's drumming is amazing. You know, I was so busy concentrating on all those technical aspects of it that I didn't really listen to the emotional connection of it, which is Maynard, I guess. And I suppose another thing...
But not only because, I mean, we should say as well, one thing I've noticed immediately from the first listen is Maynard is used incredibly sparingly in this record.
Far less than he has been in the past. Yeah, definitely.
I would say less than... This is the least Maynard heavy album that he has ever appeared on.
Ooh.
That he's fronted. I mean, obviously, White Pony doesn't count.
Yeah, probably. My only contender for that would maybe be the first Pussifer album, but you're probably still right. Yeah. Again, I don't want to go back to this and throw it in your face over and over again. But another reason why I sort of call it a post-rock record, because there are very few vocals on it. There are vocals on it, but in comparison to what we've heard in the past, there aren't really any songs that it feels like Maynard leads.
No.
You know, which is fine. I mean, some people will probably be disappointed by that, but it's very much a latter day Maynard James Keenan performance. The album it reminded me of the most is Eat the Elephant, which I suppose is
really?
in terms of how he performs and the timbre of his voice. He comes in quite high on a lot of these things, but high and soft. I don't think he screams once on the record. The kind of the old Maynard of screaming on the likes of The End of the Grudge or throughout Ticks and Leeches. There's absolutely none of that at all on here.
Nope.
And I don't think we're ever going to get that Maynard again, which is fine. But you know, that is not on here at all. And I mean, to be fair, I mean, if I had been presented with the music that those 3 incredible musicians, all of whom I would say on this album are at the top of their game, if I'd presented with that music and said, right, now put words on it, there would be an element of lyrics on it. There'd be an element of me which is I don't want to fuck it up. Yeah. I don't want to insinuate that this record would be as good without lyrics and Maynard's contribution, because I don't think it would.
No, I don't.
But I do think it would still be a fucking amazing record, even without Maynard's contribution.
I mean, it's incredible to listen to a band who... Most bands will put their singer as the focal point.
Yeah.
And most bands, if they don't do that, one of the other instruments will become the kind of lead instrument when there is no vocalist.
Yeah.
So the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's Flea.
Yeah.
Right? Van Halen, it's Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Right, we could do this all day, but you get what I'm saying. It's fairly rare that, to be honest, I can't even think of another one, where even within one song, every instrument will become the lead instrument for a bit. Like, I mean, on the second track, Numia,
great song,
which is absolutely incredible. I mean, it's almost like they're pulling the song in the direction that they want it to go in, and it barely, all three of them, Danny Carey, Justin Chancellor, Adam Jones, barely play the same riff, the same part, the same beat, the same rhythm, the same bass line. They barely play it twice.
Hardly
the entire
ever.
Song.
Hardly ever. Well, hardly. I would even argue on the album.
Yeah, I would.
And
particularly, it really struck me in that song. I was like, Danny Carey comes to the forefront and he plays something, and then the second time around he plays it completely differently, so that Justin Chancellor becomes the most prominent thing, and then do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's not even like music. It's like you know, it's like it sounds pretentious to say it's like nature. It's like wind, but it's so unpredictable.
It's like wind.
It's like wind.
They're not going to want to put that on the poster, I don't think. Actually,
Probably
Maynard,
not.
with Maynard's sense of humour, they probably would.
But do you know what I mean? It's like you can't predict even when it kind of, on a very, very surface level, you'd go, oh yeah, they're just doing this part.
Yeah.
Even that part itself changes so that it kind of phases in and out of.
I know what you mean.
In charge of it.
It's not it's never ever a switch. It's never ever like, this is Justin's part and now this is Danny's part. It happens so subtly and so lucidly and fluidly that you don't even notice it until it's happened.
And so when they do kick in together, when they all come together,
it's so big.
You know, it's like
So big. Yeah.
Incredible.
It's like a hurricane.
Volcano erupting.
Yeah. Every time it's like a hurricane. Even though you've heard, you know, they did it 10 minutes ago, it's still like a hurricane, because every time it just beats you in the chest or the gut, or it's absolutely monstrous every time they come together.
Yeah.
With it. It's brilliant.
It really is. But there's also, I was going to talk about so you haven't heard Legion Inoculum, have you?
The version I have heard, now, we probably need to talk about interludes and tracks and so on and so forth.
Even I don't think I've heard the proper version.
Okay. So there is a physical release, which is around, I think it's 79 minutes and 10 seconds, something like that. And then there is a digital release, which has an additional 3 tracks, all of which are interludes. Which is 86 minutes and something or other seconds. I can't remember off the top of my head. You posited, well, in fact, are you allowed to say that you're the one interlude for each member of the band?
Yeah. So each member of the band gets their own. So I've been told each member of the band made their own interlude part.
And the interlude that is on the physical, I think it's interesting that they have chosen, because they could have quite easily just gone, we'll just take off all the interludes and release the CD with the 6 songs on it. But they've chosen to keep Danny Carey's interlude on, Chocolate Chip Trip, which is effectively a 21st century version of Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
It's actually, I wonder actually if it has, you know that song, I think it's called Macabre on Salivial?
Yeah.
I don't know for a fact, but I wonder if it's a shortened version of that, which has been worked on in the past sort of 17, 18 years, because there are definitely similarities between the two.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing I did, apparently Danny Carey plays the synth on it.
Right.
And plays it live when they do it.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
He plays all that stuff live. And I mean, he goes full Buddy Rich.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, at the end, it goes absolutely crazy. I've put down that it goes prog dubstep, well techno, horror movie creepy, like a haunted Nintendo.
Yeah, haunted Nintendo is brilliant. And there's a gong in it. There's 2 gongs.
Yeah, big gong.
Big gong. But it's interesting that they've decided that is an important part of the record, or important enough to be on the physical release, I suppose I should say.
We said that. I mean, I wasn't sure, but you think that is actually a song? Because I was like, that's Danny Carey's little bit.
I have many theories, frankly. I know that because Adam Jones has said it multiple times in interviews, the number 7 is vitally important to this album.
Right.
So I think the fact that there are 7 tracks on the physical release is no coincidence. There are plenty of songs on the record which are clearly counted in as a 7 beat. And I'm going to paraphrase him now because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he said basically the great thing about having a beat of 7 is it, for Western ears certainly, it does the amount of beats you expect it to and then adds one more, because we're so used to having things in either 4s or 3s basically. And it just shifts you off a little bit, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And most people listening probably won't consciously be aware of it. Musicians and stuff will be counting and, finding all this shit out. But like most people will just be like, that sounds a little off and a little weird, but I don't know why. And that's, partly what I like about Tool. Yeah. Now we know that the number 7 is important for lots of reasons. I think it just kept coming up with this album. So having 7 tracks on it, I mean, I've tried a number of things. Tool have a lot of history in the past with playing around with songs, and the key one that I would reference is Wings for Marie. If you play, so there's a bonus track at the end of 10,000 Days called Vigilante Trees, and on its own it just sort of sounds like howling through the forest kind of thing. But if you put it on top of the first part of Wings for Marie Part 2 and then immediately play the Wings for Marie Part 1 after it creates what you could effectively call Wings for Marie Part 3. It creates a whole new song.
Yeah.
And this is something which I thought, this is all theory, by the way, I have no idea, but I thought number 7, you can put something in the middle of number 7, 3.5, and you can fold it in on itself and it becomes a mirror of itself. I've done a lot of experiments with trying to, put songs on top of other songs, because there's a lot of space in these songs. There's a lot of points where you go, yeah, you could put something over that and it would work, as is the case with Wings for Marie Part 1 or Part 2 if you just listen to them on their own. So far I haven't found anything, but
I was so gearing myself up to be like, you know what, Invincible and Cullen Voices, if you play them both backward, it's a cover of My Sharona or something. Do you know what I mean?
But I can't help, this might be total nonsense, but I can't help but feel like there's something there. What kind of got me thinking along these lines is the logo. Yeah. Do you know about this?
Well, I know that I've seen it, yeah, and it's what are they called? An optical illusion, is that right?
No. If you get the new logo, if you fold it in on itself, if you fold it in half and make it so that it becomes vertical lines rather than horizontal lines, it actually forms a syringe.
Ah, yes, I have seen that. Yeah, I've seen a little video of that.
And the title of the album is Fear Inoculum. And Inoculum is, when you inject a body into someone, an agent or a disease often into someone's body.
A cure.
A cure, yeah, exactly. To cure them of that disease. 9 times out of 10, it is actually, you're actually injecting, the disease in it to make your body's natural defenses build up to it. So effectively, this album is an inoculator against fear. I think that's what they want to tell us, and I think that's the starting point for whatever this whole record is about. But on all of these things, sometimes Tool detractors usually dismiss this stuff and go, "Oh well, it's just a coincidence that happens," and it's like, it really isn't.
It's definitely not coincidence.
It's definitely not
coincidence. Hoity-toity, snooty nonsense if you want, but you definitely can't say that it's an accident. No. Nothing about this band is a fucking accident.
Well, that's why it takes so much time. And I think, quite often when I talk to Tool detractors, it's all that stuff that they can't be arsed with. They're like, oh, you have to do a fucking essay just to fucking like the band or whatever. But the truth is what's wonderful about Tool is you don't have to look into any of that stuff to enjoy their music.
No, I mean, I don't really.
Yeah,
they're my favourite fucking band, and I have a passing interest in that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because I'm very nerdy about all that kind of stuff, and I'm really into it. But if you do look into it, and if you do discover it, especially if you discover it for yourself, it becomes so rewarding, so much more rewarding than anything else. I mean, it's a fucking time drain. The amount of I've been playing around with tracks on Audacity for far too many hours this week, and it's all been a total waste of time so far. So I'm a little bit annoyed, but what I've kind of come to the conclusion, I mean, I think because I don't have the full length version, I think it's going to be, I reckon these interludes will have something to do with it.
Right, okay.
I would have thought. And I would encourage people, I might be leading people down a path of utter nonsense and bullshit, which I don't really want to do. Well, but I would not be surprised at all if there is something in that.
Okay, well, I can't really tell you if that's true or not, but what I will say is this, right, is that the one that was cut out, so basically I heard it with 9 tracks.
Okay.
I've got it on Apple Music here, there's 10 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I didn't hear is Litanie Contraire la Peur.
That's French for Litany Against Fear, which goes into the album.
So I've not heard that. I presume that is some sort of interlude.
Yep, it's 2 minutes and 14 seconds apparently.
Okay, right. So, I did hear Legion Inoculum, and I did hear Mockingbeat, which are the two that you, I believe, haven't heard.
That's right.
Legion Inoculum, let me just double check my notes because obviously I've not had a chance to listen back to that, but that is the kind of Blade Runner-y one, I think. Yeah, it's a kind of, I imagined, once I found out that each member had had a chance to do their own thing, I was like, okay, well, let's see if I can guess who's who. Chocolate Chip Trip has got to be
bloody
Danny
obvious.
Carey. Got to be Danny Carey.
Yeah.
I would presume that what did I just call it? Legion Inoculum. Legion Inoculum. I would presume that is Adam Jones.
Okay.
Because it's quite cinematic. It feels there's a bit of Vangelis. It's quite sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
It's very synth laden, and I mean, one of the, not so much Tool really, but more Maynard James Keenan. One of the kind of the key things that Maynard James Keenan, one of the most Maynard James Keenan things to do, is to talk about how nature and genuine human interaction that's become his kind of byword, isn't it? Like this is, that's what Eat the Elephant is. So much of Eat the Elephant is about, technology is slowly destroying our ability to be able to see the kind of the real world and the important things in the world,
but also how nature and human beings are connected. So I think as well. So the Fibonacci sequence on Lateralis, I won't go into it here because you're about to make a point, but look it up if you've not.
But Legion Inoculum goes from very kind of harsh industrial electronic sounds into the sound of water.
Right.
And then, when it goes into... Sorry, it's Invincible, isn't it? Yeah. When it goes from Legion Inoculum into Invincible...
I think it's Descending, actually.
Descending.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got the wrong thing in front of me. Yeah, Descending. And, there seems to be a lot of, talk about finding yourself within the world in that song. So I think that's quite typical of Maynard James Keenan, and it does seem to be like a bit of a battle between nature and technology. I think those two things definitely, like, there's a lot of push and pull on this record between those two ideas, and which is, like I say, I think that's quite a... This is not the first time that they've explored those ideas.
Definitely not.
Mockingbeat, which was like the last song, I think is the last song, actually.
It's birds singing, is it not?
It's bird song, yeah. It's a parakeet. It's kind of mixed up parakeets.
Okay.
Scratching, and it all, like them being recorded on a record, and then a DJ going...
Oh, right.
Like all that.
Okay.
And then it ends. So I guess that's Justin, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll see.
Who
knows?
All I would say is there are a lot of people who are like, who will listen to Tool records and take the interludes out and say that there's no importance to them, blah, blah, blah. Tool have always maintained that there is, but I think I think that is only the case if you want to look into it on a much, much deeper level. And I would use the Virginity Trees, Wings for Marie example as well. Like, Virginity Trees on Trez on the last record is it's kind of pointless listening to it on its own. But when you understand its purpose there and why it's there, just creates this whole new thing, which, I find mind-blowing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But that's the whole thing with Tool. The more you look into it, the better it becomes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess there are some people who... This is why it's weird. Like, it's weird getting a new Tool album when there's been so long without one, because you're essentially now... I mean, I think definitely not people who listen to our podcast. I would like to think almost certainly not people who listen to our podcast, because every week we say, you must sit down and listen to this record and you must immerse yourself in it. You must explore that... to the fullest. And it feels like every other week we bring a record on and go, you really need to listen
to the whole thing.
Like the whole thing. Really kind of sit down and immerse yourself in it. But those bands tend to be not massive. Do you know what I mean? Not commercially. There's a chance. I mean, it's funny. I was saying to my mate today. I feel like there would have been a chance had the vinyl have been released for pre-order, because the vinyl's currently not available. The CD is, and it's quite pricey because they've got some sort of mad package.
4-inch HD screen within the packaging, plus 2-watt speakers, and there is actually another song which you can only hear via that version. You have to watch it on the TV screen.
Oh, Tool. but that sort of thing, I said, like if the vinyl was available, like let's go down to fucking HMV or whatever your local record shop is, or pre-order on Amazon. After Slipknot getting to number one, I could see Tool getting fairly close. I mean, I think with Taylor Swift's got a new album out, so I think it's going to be quite difficult to knock her off the top spot. But
well, I hope I'm not saying anything I shouldn't, but pre-orders for this album have been fucking insane, and the fact that each unit is very pricey, it's actually quite a lot more expensive in this country than it should be, partly because of Brexit, I was told. Yay. But anyway, it's complicated reasons. It's not just that, but there's lots of reasons. But despite the unit price being quite expensive, a lot of money, and the fact that it's being released on what the majority of people see as a redundant format, the physical pre-orders have been fucking mad, like sky high, incredible. And some countries base Germany, for instance, base their charts not on how many units are sold, but how much money is given over. So that gives them even more of a chance, and blah, blah, blah. So number one record for Tool, yeah, definitely not beyond the round. But actually,
it's going to be. It
will be tough.
I
But
think it's going to be tough. If Taylor Swift hadn't dropped that record, I think it would have been more likely. I really think, because for me, I want the vinyl.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I want it on vinyl, and I think if the vinyl was coming out the same day, I think most people who would be invested in this are going to want it on vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I probably will buy it on CD. I'm just fucking giving loads of CDs away at the moment, but I probably will still buy it anyway, because I'm a fucking collector and a nerd.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to Tool stuff.
You better, well, by the sounds of things, you better be quick, because they're running out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do adore this fact that Tool subvert everything that you're quote unquote supposed to do in order to be a big band or commercially viable or whatever. Not having their songs on streaming services for as long, holding out as long as they did, it's insane.
Holding out longer than the Beatles and Prince stuff.
Yeah. Releasing an album that, I know Fear Inoculum was released as a single, but it isn't a single.
No.
There are no, Adam Jones.
I said in my review of Metal Hammer, and I kind of think I stand by it as well, the closest thing we get to a single in this really is, it's not even a whole song. I think it's the first half of Invincible. You could go, that's kind of Schism-esque.
Oh, right, okay.
But that's only the sort of first 6 minutes of it.
Yeah.
It's 12 minutes and 44 seconds long.
Yeah.
once you get past that kind of 6 to 7 minute long, you know, you're talking about like the most accessible is a 7 minute long song. Like, who else?
Yeah.
Like when Avenged Sevenfold released in a 7 minute long single, people were talking about them like they were the most
insane band in the world.
Oh my god, they're mad, aren't they? They're so like, you know what I mean? They're so forward thinking. They just don't give a fuck. There is nothing that could be considered a single on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely nothing. And I love the fact that there is a band who just go, well, this is how the art will be. I mean, there's a few bands who do this, but this is how the art will be better. Yeah. We're not pandering down.
It's certainly not as big as Tool, though, any of those bands are.
No. I was thinking maybe Nine Inch Nails. Are they as big as Tool?
Yeah,
it's debatable.
I think Nine Inch Nails are comparable.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Even Nine Inch Nails, like... You're right, a single, right?
Yeah. Not in the same way. I think Nine Inch Nails won't compromise on their art in different ways.
No,
but yeah.
True.
It's. I think it. And there's a lot of people who get. I mean, I've talked to so many people who fucking hate this packaging idea and think it's dreadful that that's the only way that you can get a physical version, all that sort of thing. But I kind of think it should be celebrated that a band who stick to their morals and stick to how they want the art to be so rigidly is able to be this much of a success. That is...
I worry that it prices people out a little bit. I will say that.
I mean, it is certainly in this country, it's probably too much money. And it is
What are we looking at? 75 quid, right?
It's 80 in this country. Yeah.
For a CD.
For a CD, yeah. I mean, you know, we haven't seen them yet. We haven't seen we haven't seen what it does. I mean, if it was the, one thing I will say, the 10,000 Days lenticular glasses thing. I mean, that sounded really cool and was kind of a bit meh when it came out, I would say, so... And
that was 15 quid when it was released.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to see. We can't really... There's very few albums where we would review the packaging. I mean, maybe it does deserve a review. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. The thing, actually, we've kind of gone off on one a bit there, because what my original point was is that even though on this podcast we review a lot of records where we would probably treat them with the same kind of level of respect as we would Tool. I don't think Tool are unique in comparison to how we would probably speak about, you mentioned Nine Inch Nails, Her Name is Kala, I would put in that kind of the fucked up album, obviously, of course I would. And there are many records that have come out,
definitely,
like Teeth of the Sea or whatever, that you could go, well, you really should sit down and kind of
listen to the whole thing.
Listen to this a few times and let it really seep into your psyche and get it.
Definitely.
But as I mentioned, those bands aren't as big as Tool. And it feels weird to be talking about a band who do all this stuff when they've been away for so long and no one else has really done it to that level. Like, this is... Even with Rammstein, right? Rammstein were a band who, Tool get... Because Rammstein had, we didn't get a kind of stream of Rammstein. You were invited along to a listening party of the Rammstein record, which I was going to go to, and then at the last minute I couldn't go to. But Rammstein did it in a very similar way. Rammstein were away for 10 years. But even Rammstein feel like way more commercially viable and more in touch with at least participating in what the modern world wants it to do.
For starters, Rammstein have singles.
Definitely.
Yeah. They released, how long is that record? 50, 55 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
It's 11 songs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Rammstein are a traditionally commercial act in any way, shape or form, but compared to Tool, they kind of are. Yeah.
I think Pink Floyd are compared to Tool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty insane.
And I feel that should be celebrated. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people who aren't celebrating that, but I feel like it should be. Yeah. It feels like we really, really, really should. Unless you feel like I'm skipping over anything, it feels like we should really talk about Tempest or Seven.
Yes,
Pest,
I do.
Doesn't it?
I was actually about to say, in terms of the actual music, which we have skirted around. We've been talking about the album for God knows how long. We've kind of skirted around the music. I mean, as you mentioned before, I think there is a similar pace throughout the record for the most part.
Certainly, I would say for the first, taking out the interludes, first 5 tracks. So Fear Inoculum, Pneuma, Invincible, Descending, and Culling Voices.
Are all kind of... they're all great, like you say.
Yep,
I think
all
they're
brilliant.
All, they're all over 10 minutes long. They all weave incredible spells. They all go in completely different directions. They all end in ways that are totally different from what came from at the start.
Well, often it's actually the same riff.
Yeah,
but
true.
so much more expanded. This is another reason why I suspected it might be a mirror album, because there's so many times where tracks mirror one another if you folded them in on themselves. But anyway, that's another theory.
But then it comes to 7 Empest, which is what I guess we're going to call it. It's Tempest, isn't it?
It's Tempest,
but
yeah.
it's 7 instead of a T. Cool.
Silly boys.
15 minutes, 43 seconds long. Now, this is one, I'm going to get my notes for this, because this is one, when I first heard it, straight away, I was like, wow.
Well, I will say very quickly here, typical Tool to make the longest song, not only on this record, but the longest song they've ever recorded, by far the most immediate track on the record.
Yeah.
By far.
Like, for real.
Not necessarily the best, although you may disagree with me. And I think only time will tell if it's the best, but most definitely the most immediate.
I've put this as the most instantaneous one for the metal fans.
Yeah.
And the heaviness of it means that, to me, it is the most diverse song on the record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the most eclectic. It goes further.
Yeah.
Because, not all of it is... there's a point where I thought it ended, and then it kind of comes back up again.
Yeah.
I do think it is the best song on the record.
Fair enough. I mean, I would probably say that now, but I'm only 8 listens in. When I'm 800 listens in, I may disagree. But who knows?
Quite a good point, to be fair.
That's all I'm saying. It probably is my favourite track on the record right now, but in 3 years' time, who knows?
It's not as clean as the rest of the record, is it?
Nope.
It's genuinely quite heavy. And there's a point where, and I don't, there's a few things when you say about things you haven't heard Tool do. There's a few things in this record that I haven't heard Tool do. There is a very pronounced 70s, like early 80s, almost John Carpenter, Vangelis synthesizer sound.
Yes.
Is in this record.
Yes. I think
whether that's Adam Jones's kind of chameleon-like skills as a guitarist.
They've had touches of it. Again, in Reflection, which I've already mentioned, and there's another song as well. It might even be right into From 10,000 Days. Don't quote me on that. But they've only touched on that synth sound before, whereas it's on this quite a lot.
It's on it a fair bit, yeah, and it's it's on here. But also, I don't think I've ever heard Tool, as they do in Tempest, do a dual guitar Iron Maiden, Judas Priest metal 2 guitar part.
Yeah.
That chug.
Yeah.
They've never done that before.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm so glad you said Iron Maiden, because I wrote Iron Maiden in my notes and I thought, I'm going to have a fight with Steve about this, aren't I?
Well, no,
but it is Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliant though, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It's like Iron Maiden on ketamine. It's like a little bit slower.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not ketamine. That's a bit harsh.
So the first time I listened to it, in one of my notes here, and I probably don't think this now, which goes to show how much this album sort of changes and morphs the more you listen to it. But I've put that Adam dominates this track, and I say it's the only time on the record where one member of the band leads the whole band throughout the whole song. But I'm not sure if that is true. That's from my first listen. But the fact that I thought that the first time around, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be reading stuff from what I wrote the first time around, because I'll probably turn the page in a minute and think, at the end, my last thing I put, this is a great record. Cheers, mate. Journalist.
That's why you tune in.
But yeah, that's kind of the first thing. I've also put Core Blimey a couple of times as well.
I will say that Adam Jones on this song particularly, but actually throughout, Adam Jones has very rarely been much of a solo. You certainly know it when he's soloing. End of Third Eye is a great example. You know, he has a very distinct, unique solo sound where he uses a lot of feedback, a lot of long, drawn-out notes, which are ever so slightly discordant and give this really
Parabola,
odd feeling. It's almost like a twisting feeling. His, for want of a better word, solo on this song is fucking outrageous. I don't know. I play guitar. I have done for half my life. I haven't got a fucking clue what he's doing. I have no idea. I think he's using a slide and some effects, but I haven't got a clue, really.
It's very
impressive. Insane. And it is impressive, but it's not an impressive in a Animals as Leaders impressive sense. I mean,
you're in on it.
That's
the thing. It's actually, we're not talking about a sort of an emotional reaction to it and having an emotional resonance. There are bits in, I can't go back to it, but I think it's in Descending where I was like, the swell of his guitar and the tone of his guitar, it wails in a way that feels like Tool feel human.
Yeah.
And I'm really like, if there's one thing that the detractors will say about them being this nerdy band and this and that, and you know, like it's all really geeky and it's all just about weird time signatures and it's really clinical. Like I said, the first time I listened to this record, the first 2 times I listened to this record, I just thought how fucking impressive that human beings are capable of that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like how unbelievably, like, of course I love them because wow, isn't this incredibly impressive? But actually, you know, there are points, not even points. I was about to say something else. But Tool sound human. Like Tool don't sound like, you mentioned Animals as Leaders. You know, there's a few bands that I've listened to from the kind of more post-rock or proggy sphere, where sometimes I just go, this doesn't really have any heart to it a lot of the time, you know?
I think that's what marks...
And the tech bands particularly.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing here that isn't just, we should do this because it'll impress people.
Yeah.
And it takes away any kind of intention, it takes away any kind of... heart from it. And Tool, everything. This feels like human beings playing in a room together.
I think you have hit on exactly what makes Tool better than those other bands, and what makes Tool the Leaders.
One of the things.
Well, sure, but I think that is a massive one.
It is,
I think that is a massive one. You know, this is an incredibly technically impressive record, but I'm never listening to it in that sense. Maybe the first time, but actually, I'm only listening to it in that sense because when I first heard this, I thought I'm only going to get 2 listens of this before I need to talk about it extensively on a podcast. Yeah. So you know. I think that's why I'm going back about an hour now, but I think that's why when you said Meshuggah was the big influence on the last record, I was a bit like, it feels, I don't think you're wrong, but Meshuggah feels, I know they hate hearing it, but the too machine-like to be compared to Tool, you know?
Yeah, but I think, you know,
I don't think
they were obviously
were
going, well, that's cool that they can do that. Let's try and do a bit of that. Add a little bit of that to our sound. I think that's...
But Tool never suffer from that. And
no,
Maynard's a large part of it, but I think this record also shows that all 4 members of the band, none of them sound mechanical in anything that they're doing. Danny Carey's drumming is often impressive, but it's never mechanical. The way that Adam Jones plays those notes, whether it's a riff, I think particularly in his solos, is it sounds like pure emotion sometimes. I mean, his guitar is screaming on 7-pes, 10-pes, whatever. And Justin Chancellor's his bass tone alone, I could talk about for about an hour, which I won't. But it's beautiful. It's stunning. It's like
he plays bass like no one else.
Yeah, he plays bass like no one else. It's angelic at times, and it's often Justin who is providing the bass foundation or riffs for all of these songs. I mean, they've done that a lot in the past. Just look at Schism as an example. That is Justin's riff. It's not Adam's. But you know, particularly with this record, it feels like a lot of the time he is the foundation, but he's a foundation which is going all over the place. It's magical.
And I mean, you mentioned obviously Danny Carey bringing in stuff like Indian tablas
and stuff like that,
and African kind of Afro-Celt rhythmical things as well, which
More
are very much more pronounced. Like he's done that before, but
Yep.
again, it's much more pronounced,
Much
in
more
this
prominent.
album. And then it's hard to like the idea of trying to pick a man of the match for this album is impossible, because I don't think any of them can exist without each other, and they're all very, very impressive on their own, but it's as a unit where it really does make them so special.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to say, I was coming back today from work and I was listening to it one last time, and Invincible starts with just this kind of picked Adam Jones riff.
Yeah.
And
Very clean picked riff.
It probably goes on for 3.5 minutes without anything else happening.
It's pretty long. Yep.
And I listened to it on headphones, and actually when we were listening to it in the room with all the sofas where we first listened to it, I was like, it's like he stood behind me. It's like he's in there. This is not, Tool might be really mystical and mythical, and this album is a fucking, I think in the Metal Hammer review I called it an enigma inside of a Pandora's box of an album.
Yeah.
But they still feel like people making this record.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really human. And I think that actually makes it even more impressive, because you can listen to bands play 1 million notes an hour and, blast beats and all the other stuff, and it can lose everything apart from the technicality. That's really, really impressive. Wow, it's cool that people can do that. But do they actually feel like people? Whereas Tool actually do feel like people. And I think getting that balance to the point where they've got it, where they are just exceptional at both of those things to this degree, to this standard, at this point, I'm like, 13-year wait. I'd wait another 13 years if I was going to get something as good as this again.
Yeah, I think. I think that's what takes the time. I mean, we should be clear that this album has not taken 13 years to make, because there's been legal wranglings and they've been touring 10,000 Days and all sorts of things, and Maynard's been doing Pucifer and Perfect Circle. It did take about 3 years to make, and even like these big prog rock masterpieces or prog metal albums, will often take about 6 months, and it's that kind of thing which is what takes so long to make it sound human or less mechanical, or getting a part where Justin and Adam are playing off of one another, might be playing totally different rhythms, but somehow it all mixes and colludes in a way that it actually works, and that's the thing that Tool do, which almost every other band doesn't, and that's why we talk about them in this kind of, with this level of awe, I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was going to use. Awe. Having lived with it 8 listens in, I know we've spoken about it quite a lot, but I almost feel like we should come back to it in the end of the year.
Well,
I'm sure spoiler alert.
Yeah.
There's no the idea that this wouldn't be in my top 20 albums of the year is insane.
Yeah.
Like you all know that it's going to be in there.
Yeah.
So we will be talking about it later on.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And I think we should do, and it deserves to be talked about. I mean, maybe not for this long, but again, because you cannot. 10,000 Days took me about 3-4 years before I really loved it. Like, at first I was like, oh, it's a good album, and it took several years before I went, actually, it is a brilliant album, and it is almost as good as Lateralis and Anima,
What do you anticipate the reaction to this? So what we can't say exactly how great this is and where it sits in the. I mean, again, another music journalist who I won't name and shame listened to it once and went, "It's definitely better than 10,000 Days, but it's not as good as Lateralis." I heard them say as they were walking out, and I just thought, you clearly don't understand this band at all. Like you can't make that kind of proclamation after
No.
one fucking listen,
No.
especially when you spoke all the way through it, you prick. But anyway, so I'm not going to say like, well, where does it sit in their back?
Yeah.
We can't have that.
I've been
conversation.
asked. I have to say, I've been asked that a lot over the past couple of days, and at the moment, it's impossible to say.
Yeah, I think it's very, very. You get a feel of how you might feel of it.
Yeah, I've got a feel about. Nah, I wouldn't want to say.
But what we can say is what we think the reaction to it will be. What do you think the reaction to this is going to be?
I think it will be enormously
polarizing
and split to begin with. I think there'll be a week or two of we live in a culture where even just when the single came out. Single. I mean, I do really feel like I need to go
13 years for that.
single. Yeah, exactly. You had this polarizing thing of like, I mean, to judge Tool on a single is so. I didn't even listen to it because I was like, I don't want to listen to it until it's part of the full package, But yeah, my timeline was full of either this is the best thing ever or this is the worst shit I've ever heard. And we talked about this earlier with the Giantwood thing, that is the initial bullshit that you have to kind of navigate through before you actually understand where this album is going to be placed. I hope it will be placed enormously highly in people's regards, and I hope that a lot of people will take, and it sweeps album of the year lists at the end of the year and so on and so forth, because I would like to see an album this daring and this. I'd like to see a post-rock album this daring, which it effectively is, be taken to everyone's heart. And if there's any band who's going to release a record where everything is against it in a commercial sense, more air quotes, I think Tool are the band to do that, and it become a massive, massive fucking success. But people are going to have to spend time with it, and they are going to have to listen to it a few times. And we live in an incredibly disposable society where, there'll be another record out in a couple of weeks' time, and will people give it that? I mean, I will say I've been pleasantly surprised by the reaction to Tool since it went up on streaming. I thought a lot of young people would listen to them and go, I don't see what the fuss is all about. Like, listen to it once and go, I don't see what the fuss is about. And, the reaction has been very, very positive, generally, I think. So I hope I'm pleasantly surprised and it is embraced as a genuinely brilliant record.
Yeah, me too. The thing is, like last time when you bought 10,000 Days, you better listen. You either go out and buy something else or you carry on listening to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not the case. We're in a totally different world now where you can listen to the Tool record once, totally dismiss it because you've not paid anything to do that once it's on streaming sites, and then not bother getting into it. And I think before they went up on streaming sites, I think that's what I would have assumed would happen to this record. But I've been really pleasantly surprised with how many people, usually young people, have turned around and gone, "Oh my god, Tool are brilliant, aren't they?" So and it's like, yeah, we've been fucking telling you for years, but but so who knows?
They ain't just get. Yeah, it'd take a brave person to take a punt on a fucking £100 picture disc of Lateralis on vinyl. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well,
I will say that. Like I said, I just buy the albums, and people were like, Lateralis picture disc fucking vinyl is £100. I'm not paying.
I mean, MP3s of them do exist. There are they're always available digitally. Weren't they? You could buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, there are other ways. They're on YouTube. Yeah, if you really,
Want to be a prick about it? You want to listen to your fucking Tool on your telly?
Well, true. Yeah.
Oh. Anyway, I guess that's that's that, isn't it?
Well, we could go on for hours, couldn't we? But it feels like a good place to stop it. I mean, there's several. We've not even talked about Culling Voices. We've barely talked about Invincible and Descending. I mean, those songs were released already. But
they are. I mean, what
but
I
they're
will
all
say
brilliant.
about those songs are great. They're 10 minutes plus. They either start with a very ingenious piece of bass, stroke drum, stroke guitar, and the rest of the band slowly, like smoke,
building on it. Yes,
everything kind of seeps in. This album doesn't. I suppose again to kind of really close up. I mean, that's the thing. The genius of Tool is that I don't ever feel like it doesn't feel like it's played to a click track. It doesn't.
It's not.
Feel like. Well, I'm sure it's not. It doesn't feel like it's played to a click track. It doesn't feel like it's been too touched by computers. It all feels really real, but
organic.
It feels really organic. It feels really. It moves and it flows and it builds and it dissipates and it gives it respects the other instruments. Like they're just it's a fucking master. Like what it is a whether you enjoy listening to this or not, you cannot deny this is an absolute masterclass in songwriting, in dynamics, in musical. In generosity, generosity,
in the manner in which four musicians interact with one another, and how they give one another space for their parts to breathe, but also each member is contributing something utterly outstanding as well.
So there you have it. Let us know what you think. At riot_podcast. We're on Twitter if you want to give a little review of the new Tool album.
Yeah, I would like
to listen. I want to know what people think. I'm really intrigued to know what people think, especially the people who have. This is, there'll be people who've never heard Tool before, who have never bothered with Tool until they came out on streaming services, who don't remember a Tool album being released or kind of remember the last one being released, and do you know what I mean? But weren't really
definitely
that sort of thing. There'll be a lot of people that is true for. So, Fear Inoculum is out. See you in 2032 then.
Let's hope it's not that long.
Really.
Danny Carey was saying was it in Metal Hammer? He was saying if it's another 13 years, he'll be 71 by that time. Let's be a bit quicker next time.
Yeah, I don't want to be doing that. My back hurt enough waiting to see him download by after I'm 39. I'll be 52.
Yeah.
52?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I'll be dead. So,
No, don't say that. Anyway.
With my cholesterol.
Fear Inoculum by Tool is out right bloody fucking now. Don't know why I did it in that accent. Let's talk about another album, which is not entirely, I said this to you, I don't think this is entirely dissimilar language that we'll be using for this record.
Okay,
I don't think.
yeah.
This is a band called Hugar Varroa. This is their second album. They're an Icelandic instrumental duo.
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's right. I was only. I'm not sure about your pronunciation of the title.
Varroa.
Well, it's a D, isn't it? It's Varda, isn't it? Varda.
Oh, okay. I've read it wrong. It's got a bloody weird thing over the top.
It's got a weird thing on it.
It's got an umlaut.
It's not an umlaut. It's a funny cross thing. Wait. Anyway.
Brexit means Brexit, mate. I'm not fucking paying attention to all these lot of spelling their stupid words.
So they're an ambient duo who use a lot of sort of piano and brass and strings as well as guitar and drums. You could probably fit them into the neoclassical mold of stuff that we've covered a little bit in the past. I think probably the best record we've covered since we've been a podcast is that Olafur Arnold's the Remember record. Olafur Arnold's actually did drums on their first album. So the Icelandic scene is very small because very few people live in Iceland. But they've also worked with Björk, Sigur Rós, Olafur Arnold's, and Jóhann Jóhannsson, as well as the lead singer from Agent Fresco and stuff. So they've collaborated with loads of musicians in the past. But this is actually their second record proper, if that makes sense.
It's a little bit different from all of those things as well, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
And I think the brass plays quite like when you say this band have got a brass section or this artist has got a brass section.
Well, they use a lot of brass, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But so when you think about brass and the way that it's used in alternative music, quote unquote rock music, or like whatever you want to call it, you get an idea in your head of that being one of two things. Usually, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and that is either ska punk, which is not this,
Definitely
or
not.
that kind of mad jazz trumpet.
Sort of a Mars Volta style.
Yeah, Mars Volta, or what's it like? Apple Dueth. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
A bit of that, no?
What about Blow Your Trumpets, Gabriel?
That's weird actually, because that's one of the ones that I thought of in sort of connection with this record, because that is that kind of background, like sort of swell.
Yeah, okay.
Of brass, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as extreme.
I mean, comparing this record to Behemoth is very off.
Shouldn't have done that. But I think the intent of what it's meant to do.
I understand what you're
sort of
saying.
Similar.
Yeah.
This is like a Hovis advert set in a geyser.
Fine. I mean, that sounds quite pleasant.
Yeah, man, and it is, and I think this is a pleasant album.
It's a really pleasant listen, and it's really, really nice. It's the kind of thing that I like to work to. This kind of music, it sort of just takes me away and just changes the atmosphere in the room a little bit and just makes everything seem a bit more pleasant and doable, than if Behemoth is blasting out at me, which I find distracting. I think there are better records along this lines than this, but actually I think this is a really pleasant way to spend. It's about 48 minutes as well. It's actually, I keep thinking it's much shorter than it is, and maybe that's because I'm not being bombarded constantly, but it doesn't bore me at any point or anything like that.
No, I mean, it's not the most dynamic of listens, I don't think.
No, there are it for the most part it stays very, very ambient, and then there are a few moments where it's
I like that as well, and it does sound good. And it just, that to me is, you need to concentrate. You need to sit and concentrate on the Tool album. You probably are going to be concentrating or being attacked by the Behemoth album, whether you like it or not. You're right. This is a cool record, and these records are cool to put on and just feel like you're listening to something calming and enjoyable and nice, and enough that it grabs your attention. Is well made enough that it grabs your attention to go, oh, that's a nice little bit.
Yeah.
And when that brass section does kind of cut through a bit, and when they do throw in a little odd time signature here and there, I go, this is on. This
exactly.
is on. Yes, it's
Yeah,
definitely on.
yeah.
And you are sort of suddenly it catches your ear.
Yeah.
It's a bit like listening to somebody else's interesting conversation.
Oh.
Or overhearing someone else's interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know sometimes you hear people and you think, I shouldn't really listen to them, but you can't help it, and then they'll say something and you go, oh, and you sort of perk up. But it's quite just the sort of the nice feeling of voices being around you is a nice feeling. And this is a nice album.
Yeah.
I don't really feel like I remember that much of it.
No, I think a lot of these records are like that though, and I think a lot of these records, you don't pick out sort of individual songs as highlights. You put on the whole thing and just you kind of float away with it. It's very difficult to talk about these records without sounding like a total hippie, but that is that. I mean, it is the kind of music that would likely be used in like meditations and yoga and stuff like that in some places. It's just really well done. And it's, more interesting than a lot of that music, I would say. And, there's very much an Icelandic feel to it. I mean, Hovis advert in Geishas is very good. I mean, I'm not sure if the band will like that or not, but it is good.
Fucking, you don't like a Hovis advert?
No, I'm sure they'll be fine with it. I wanted to bring this forward because I think it is I think it's a good example of this without it being sort of like the best, But I do really like what they're doing. I think they've worked with some brilliant musicians. I think when it's good, it's really fucking good, And if you like that kind of ambient, chilled out sort of thing and vibe, which I do quite a lot, I'd say sort of Stars of the Lid, ambient sides of Sigur Rós. Olafur Arnalds is a very good, Max Richter. then this is absolutely worth checking out. It's nice. I'm glad you liked it. I wasn't sure if you were going to be just
I quite liked it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I thought it was an enjoyable way to spend 40 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's very nice. It's the sort of thing you might put it on. Oh, I don't. You might put it on to go to bed, kind of thing.
Right.
But it's background music, but in the nicest possible way. Most of the time, when I say something's background music, I'm being disparaging towards it. This is background music which just changes the atmosphere of a room and makes everything feel a bit more pleasant.
Yeah, it's good. It's quite good.
Yep.
So there you go. They're called Hugar.
Hugar.
And the album has got a D in it.
It's called. I think it's Varda. I mean,
Varda,
all of these. All of the names are Icelandic, and we don't know what we're doing in terms of pronunciation. But
Sorry about that, guys. But hey, listen, we're going to keep in Scandinavia, and we're going to be moving on to Entombed AD, Bowels of Earth.
Yeah.
The third album of new material from Entombed AD after the, I have to say, fairly ho-hum Back to the Front in 2014 and Dead Dawn in 2016.
Little confession here: I have not. This is the first Entombed AD record I've ever heard. Could you, for people who don't know, and actually just fill in a couple of blanks for me? What is the difference between Entombed and Entombed AD?
So,
Steve?
Entombed AD is Elgi Petrov, who is the vocalist. Voice of Entombed, and some other dudes.
Okay, so Elgi is the only person from Entombed. Okay.
And there is an Entombed with, I believe it's Alex Helid, has kept the Entombed name.
Okay.
And I think some of the other previous members, but not Nick Anderson, is in the current incarnation of Entombed.
Mm-hmm.
But, this isn't Entombed, so it's not really Entombed. But then I don't think the Entombed doing the rounds is really Entombed either. I don't like these situations where you're both saying that you're a thing. I mean, Queen's like have it at the moment, and to be fair, I don't want one Queen to have, let alone two. But it's always a bit of a weird one. We think, well, you're both doing the same. All right, you obviously don't like each other. You obviously had a falling out. But they were banned for so long,
and neither is as good as the other. Neither is as good as the
original,
the original
thing.
Yeah.
And that might, they might still, the last Entombed album, the Serpents one, I can't remember the full name of it. It's not a great record, to be fair. That came out in like 2010 or something, like 2008, 9, something like that.
You'll know better.
And I would like to have Entombed back as Entombed, sort of selfishly, because I'd like to see the proper Entombed playing those classic songs, but also because the last time Entombed were around, there wasn't a whole raft of really fucking cool British and United States based sludgy hardcore bands who had sort of wholesale borrowed their guitar sound and their kind of taken that and turned it into this, a lot of the punk bands that we rave about all the time now. That sludgy hardcore thing is a direct, I don't want to say rip off, but it's from a direct influence.
Certainly influenced, yeah.
Huge influence that Entombed had on that scene.
They're often one of the main bands who are credited with the black and roll movement, aren't they?
Death and roll. Yeah.
Death and roll. Sorry. Yeah.
So it's just a shame that these situations. I just think it's a shame. So I think we should say that first of all. But this album, this is a tough week, is what I will say for any band, because you're up against Tool. We said at the start, you're up against Tool, and bless what they're called, Vardo. Hugar. What's the album called?
Varda, yeah. The Hugar album technically came out the week before.
Okay, fine. That's us putting it on them. I'm sorry, lads. But Varda, is a good record. It's a fine record, but there's enough that is sort of, even though I said it sort of sits in the background, and it is obviously very, very different from the Tool record, very, very different. But when you've got a Tool record and you've also got that, it is like, if I listen to something ambient, involving, I ain't listening to you, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Entombed are all right this week, because they've just gone, nah, fuck subtlety, fuck it. Like, do what the Entombed of old used to do and just absolutely blast through 11 tracks of just disgraceful guttural death metal. And fucking fair play to them. It sounds good.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a disagreement over this one. I'm afraid. I mean, I don't want to.
10 tracks actually. Sorry, not 11.
That's exactly what my disagreement was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no. I mean, I don't like death metal in the way that you like death metal. I'm far more. Are we calling this death metal? Well, I'm
happy to call it death metal.
They're calling it death metal, so I'm going to call it death metal.
Right, from me.
You are definitely a bigger fan of this kind of thing than me. I feel like, I'm quite happy to say this. I feel like a casual death metaler. I will take what I consider the best of the genre, the best sort of half a dozen bands, and I'm probably happy with that, to be honest. I think Entombed AD are perfectly fine. I think they do the old school death metal thing rather than the newer sort of version of it. So it's kind of doesn't sound like it was recorded in a cookie tin or anything like that. But it's a bit of a rawer kind of more I don't know, razor bladey sound.
Yeah,
razor
kind of
buzzsaw guitars. Yeah. And I think
Rusty Chainsaw is my favourite sheriff, by the way.
And I think it's fine. But I am not the person to come to. If you come to me at the end of the year and say, what's the best death metal record of the year, I would say, well, talk to someone else. But of all the death metal records that we have covered this year, it's probably my least favourite, and I made a little list of them of records that you could call death metal. And so we've done the Venom Prison one.
Yeah, Venom Prison's better than this.
Bloodbath.
Come on, Bloodbath. That was last year, wasn't it?
I'm sure Bloodbath was this
last
year. Oh, well, I've ended on 3 then, in that case. But a Monomath. Is that death metal?
This, it's Viking kind of death metal, yeah. Viking metal. Yeah, I'll give you that though. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I don't want to get too bogged down.
I
don't want to be someone on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like on Jared Dine's comment.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that person.
The only other one I could think of was Soilwork.
Yeah, that's sort of melodic death metal, but it's actually kind of. It's not really. I might query that one. That's
okay.
Like sort of.
That's fine. I will defer to you. But I was struggling to think of many others. I mean, I almost threw Full of Hell in there, but I was like, there's a lot. No. Yeah. Quite. And Full of Hell clearly pisses on this. And I would personally say, I mean, 2 of those records are Monomath and Soilwork. If you don't want to include Soilwork, fine. But 2 of those records I wasn't massively into. I probably prefer a Monomath and Soilwork to this, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah, I probably do, actually. And to be super clear, I don't think this is a bad album. I just don't think there's anything to particularly recommend with it either. I think it's very... to be fair to them, I will say this. LG in the bio, he says... let me cut this.
You say, fuck you, Renfrey, why don't you like death metal?
He says in their bio, it's death metal, simple and straightforward, right? Yeah, it is. That's probably not going to be for me, I guess. There's very little death metal where it is just that and nothing else that's going to entertain me. So I'm not going to sit here and go, this album's crap, because I don't think it is crap. I just don't think it's that good either. I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine. It's fine. It's okay.
I like it.
Okay.
I like it more than the other 2. I probably like it more than the last Entombed album.
Okay.
But I don't like it more than any of the great Entombed stuff.
Absolutely not.
Definitely.
Absolutely
There's
not.
No, I see exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few. I mean, I pressed this with a great degree of trepidation. Because I am such a big fan of Entombed, and I was like, when I got the first Entombed AD, I went, "Oh yes!" And I put it on, and I sort of went, okay. Yeah. But So when this one kicked off, Torment Remains into Elimination, I was like, gee, all you got to do is get the tone right. Just get that tone right and make it fast and make it death metal. And you've got the geezer from Entombed fronting you. Like, I'm going to probably, I am a fish in a barrel and he's got a fuck off big shotgun.
Yeah.
LG Petrov. For me, like, I've just got, in the same way as you're saying it's not really for you,
Yeah.
I suppose I have to sort of fess up and go,
It's
yeah. It is like knocking on my door going, hello, you will like me.
And to be fair, I think there are a lot of people listening / watching this who will be exactly the same. If you just like death metal and you just lap it all up, I would recommend this album definitely.
Here's what I like about it, because I mentioned the sort of tonality of it, and
Yeah.
what I thought lacked in the kind of the last Entombed record into the sort of Entombed AD releases is Entombed feel not just heavy and brutal, but a bit scary as well. Do you know what I mean? They like when you listen to a song like this with the Devil from To Ride, Shoot Straight, or when we had anything from Wolverine Blues, to be fair, has got like a kind of like a screaming in the background. There's almost like going on in the background, and it's just
There's something very
unsettling
unsettling,
and unnerving about Entombed at their very, very best. And I think they managed to capture that. There's a bit at the start of, I mean, the bit that I think the cool kind of high point of the record is Bourbon Nightmare into Fit for a King.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really like that, because it kind of stomps for a bit and then it speeds up and it feels it kind of like, I like it when they lurch.
Okay.
And it does that and it feels and it's got that kind of, Bourbon Nightmare. It's got that rock and roll vibe to it.
It has a sort of it's in the name, isn't it? Sort of whiskey bar rock and roll vibe. Yeah.
And they're great at
sour
doing
mash.
That. Yeah, they're great at doing that. And when they go full kind of B movie, like B movie death metal, slacker fucking slasher film death metal, chainsaws,
Cannibal Corpse kind of thing.
Chainsaws and chugging beer, and it's almost like taking all of the aesthetics of thrash and putting it into death metal.
I 100% agree with you. The old and tuned records absolutely have that unsettling feeling. I didn't feel unsettled by this. I was quite disappointed by not feeling unsettled.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not there throughout the whole album. I have to say, the Hank Williams cover, I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive, that didn't work. I think even Devil Driver, we saw the Devil Driver covers record, I think. Yeah,
Devil Driver did a better job.
Yeah, leave it to
doing
Des,
that sort of thing.
Leave it to Des to do them.
There was one. I read the bio because one of us has to, and there.
Neither of us.
Well, actually, in terms of this bio, no, neither of us needed to. But it said flying the flag for Balls Out and murderous death metal, and I was like, Balls Out, fine. Murderous, when you've got Venom Prison, and fucking, Dying fetus, Cannibal Corpse, even, Decapitated, fuck it. Like, when you've got those bands, calling this murderous death metal is a little bit like, really? I thought it was, I don't want to call it tame, because it's so obviously, if you gave this to common man on the street, they wouldn't think it's tame. But for death metal, I think it's quite tame.
Yeah, maybe. But then, I mean, for death metal, To Ride, Shoot Straight, Speak the Truth is quite tame for death metal. It's just the songs are fucking brilliant.
And the songs are quite good on this.
Yeah, that is the difference. Like, okay, like, this is not some glorious return to form.
No,
this is just, for me, this is an album where I go, you sound like Entombed more than you did in the other ones. So
you're happy? Fair enough.
I'll take it.
Fair enough.
And I even like, there's a bit of that kind of. We were one of the first shows we ever did. We spoke about the Same Difference by Entombed, and I love that on Changes, that slide, bow, 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 slide guitar, and he's even chucked a little bit of that. I don't know if he has, but there is one hears a bit of that in. I think it might be Worlds Apart. There's one of them towards the kind of latter period of it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, these guys obviously love Entombed as well. Like, the people who are playing it, they may not be of the same caliber, and it may not be as good as the chemistry, mate. We've spent ages talking about chemistry, and I think the chemistry of those people at that time obviously played a massive part into the formation of Entombed. And it's not quite the same on this. But those people obviously have a great degree of reverence. I bet they love being in this band.
Yeah, I'm sure they do, and more power
not
to
really
them.
Any reason why we should sort of be like, oh, bless them. Like,
Well, that's why I'm not being really cruel on it. But I don't like it, and I won't listen to it again. But there are people who will dig this just for it being more Entombed like than it has been in the past. Such as yourself. I don't know. I guess I'm often the one on this show who's going, I want to have a genre with a little twist or something. I want something a little bit different. And by their own admission, this is very straight ahead. It's 36 minutes. It's bang, bang, bang. There are tiny, tiny little moments of what I would very, very... maybe call experimentation on it. Like there's a piano on one track which comes in for 30 seconds, then is completely dismissed.
They've done piano a bunch of times in the past.
No, sure, but AD or Entombed as a whole.
Entombed.
It's a different band, isn't it? And then the piano is completely dismissed for the rest of the song until one riff at the end, which they clearly wrote purely so that they could bring the piano back in. And that's kind of like the most basic level of experimentation, I think. And there's like 4 moments on this record where they try something incredibly basic, and that's fine. That may well be enough for some people. Some people may not want any experimentation. In fact, a lot of people listen to death metal records probably don't want any whatsoever. So therefore, this is for you. But yeah, that don't impress me much. In the words of Shania Twain.
Yeah, a far better musician. Anyway,
I'd probably take. I know.
Fucking better watch out, mate. That's Bowels of Earth by Entombed AD.
That's all right.
Listen. Like fucking just give it a listen.
Will you go back to it?
I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, I a couple of songs I might do.
Okay,
but it depends. I listen to Entombed a lot.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? They're one of the bands I listen to the most.
Is it likely you would go to this record when you want to listen to Entombed, though?
Because I listen to so much of them.
Maybe
one day I might go, oh, fuck it, I'll put on.
Okay.
But I don't go back to the other Entombed AD because like usually it's on Spotify or whatever. So I'm like, I'll listen to that one this time, and because they're not right next to it, maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't know, but I enjoyed while I was there. I had a lovely time.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. All right, last album comes from Black Futures, Never Not Nuttin' or Nothing. This is the debut album from the UK electronic rock duo. It feels like we've been banging on about this band since we started this podcast.
That's because we
have.
have.
And if it does feel like that, then yeah, it's because we have. So
they call themselves Sentient Sonic Anarchists.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Lovely.
I didn't know that. So finally, after lots of chat, we get, because we have reviewed them live a bunch of times, and we have spoken about each kind of single that is released.
I looked back and I think I've reviewed them live on this show 4 times. You've reviewed them a couple of times as well. Yeah. So yeah, we have talked about them a lot. I think long-term listeners should basically know what they are. For those who don't listen long-term, it's a duo who have a very kind of explosive live show that with brilliant crowd participation. They bring out people in white hazmat suits that interact with the crowd in a quite brilliant way. You were very cynical about them for a little while, I think it's fair to say. Would you?
I thought to myself, I can see how this is good,
and
I do like the idea a bit. I would like to see them be given a fuck off big budget.
Well, they're on Sony, so that may well happen.
So that may happen. But I was like, it's kind of all about the music, really, isn't it? Like the music has to stand up to those things.
I think you and a lot of people have said that.
Yes, and having seen them, the last time I saw them was seeing them supporting Bring Me the Horizon, or they were playing on a different stage, but they played the All Points East day that Bring Me the Horizon played.
Yep.
And they were were it not for Idols, I think they might have been the best band of the whole day.
Yep.
They got a very, very short set, 20 minutes. They were great, and they won over a lot of people who probably had never, ever heard of them before, knew nothing about them. Stand-up drummer,
Yeah. Stand-up drummer who does loads of lots of accoutrements and lots of bits and pieces going on. Quite a lot of it is either, if not done live, triggered, which is good enough for me in these days where things aren't done live at all or on track. I would also say Radar Fest 3 or 4 weeks ago that I went to. Not a typical Radar Fest band. If you imagine sort of Tech Fest, that's kind of what Radar Fest is going for. And they were the secret act, and they did split people down the middle. But people who loved them fucking loved them.
Right,
so
okay.
they do a lot of like warehouse shows and stuff like that, taking people to secret places and then taking your phone off.
All that stuff's cool.
All that stuff. Yeah.
All that stuff's cool. And my point of them at All Points East was that they were great live, but it was probably the first time where I went, these songs sound fucking good.
Yes.
Power Drunk,
yes.
Body and Soul.
Body and Soul.
Carly
Yes.
Dig,
Yes.
Youth Man?
Gutters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hearing those songs live.
Riches,
yeah. I thought these songs sound like I want to hear the album now. I'm looking forward to hearing the album. So Renfrey, we've heard it now.
Well,
what do you think?
Well, I know we feel differently about it, so I'm hesitant already. I think, I mean, I've been following this band for 18 months to 2 years, and I feel like when you say we've heard the album now, the first time I listened to this album, I feel like I knew all of it. Because I
feel like I'd heard a lot of it.
I feel like I knew most of it, and I do think that they write amazing hooks. To be honest, I think they write incredible hooks, and I think they, on a song like Body and Soul, for example, the way that they marry it with that electronic stuff, I think is incredibly impressive. I mean, Body and Soul is basically like a 21st century reworking of Silverchair's Freak and Aphex Twin's Come to Daddy, and they mesh those two together in a way that really works, and it sounds, despite a lot of electronic stuff being used, it does sound quite organic, the way that the song moves. I think at their best, that's what Black Futures are. Whether that be Body and Soul, Riches, Youth Man is really good at that, Karma You Dig. When these songs are good, I think they are fucking brilliant. And actually, personally for me, there isn't a single song on this record that I would skip either. I think all of them are of a very decent level. And electronics with rock music historically has a sell-by date, which is very, very quick. I feel...
Radiator. Remember Radiator?
Well, you told me about Radiator, which is why I know about Radiator. Yeah, and I think... Look, I mean, predicting the future and predicting how well this is going to age is a fool's errand. But I think it's going to age pretty damn well, personally. I don't think... You mentioned the P word before we started recording, Pitch Shifter. Now, we both love Pitch Shifter, right? We do both love them, but I think we both admit that there is an element of nostalgia as to why we love them. It would be very difficult for me to wholeheartedly, hand on heart, go up to a 23-year-old and go, you have to listen to Pitch Shifter, it's going to blow your mind, I feel like this is gonna... What you don't, do you?
I don't want to... I expected it to be so I wanted an Ideas Above Our Station by 100 Reasons. Remember when I'd seen 100 Reasons those times, I was like, I know all those songs, and then the album came out and it sounded like the songs that I'd heard live.
Enormously high expectations, but sure, yeah.
But but that's do you know what I mean? Like, on a debut album with a band who you've been waiting a really, really long time.
Yeah.
They've released a bunch of songs from it.
Yeah.
About fucking 5 of them songs off 100 Reasons debut album had been released as singles before the album came out.
As is the case with this album as well, I think.
So you knew you were getting
at least half a great record.
And you were like, okay, cool. And you'd go and see them live, and I've seen them live a bunch of times, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember. And I put this on, and I kind of remember the sensation of seeing it live, right? And like I say, with that 100 Reasons album, it matched the sensation of seeing it live. I just don't feel that the excitement of their live shows has been translated onto record.
I think it's impossible to translate the excitement of their live shows onto record, but to counter that, I think it's been done as well as it possibly could have been. I do. Listening to these songs on record. Of course, I don't go mad like I do at their shows. I'm not drinking for most of the way, but I do. But I do. Obviously, I am. I've got a drip in me right now. But they do get my adrenaline going, and I do think fucking yes. You know, when Body and Soul comes in with that like I want your soul part or whatever, and I do think that. You know, I mean that Richest song. The amount of times I've done that. I don't care for money.
That's a good song.
Money don't care for.
Yeah, that's
you know
great
the amount of
song.
times I've done that hook on this podcast alone. I pretty much bring up that hook every time Black Futures are mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a very, very good debut. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's very good.
Yeah, maybe my expectation levels were a little bit higher for it because I really, having seen them and having had them really, really, really win me over live, I expected to get the album and go, yes, this is it. This is the thing. I think, again, to go back to a 90s band, I wanted How to Make Friends and Influence People, and I've got Formaldehyde.
Very few people are going to get that, but
that's Terrorvision, by the way. So the debut Terrorvision album was full of good songs that were not quite sonically.
I just needed a better production. That album, didn't it? Yeah.
And I feel like you say that you can't ever replicate the feeling of their live shows on record. I'm
not
sure,
100%.
I'm sure you can. Well, the Prodigy managed to do it.
Ooh, well, I would strongly disagree with that, but
no,
fine.
I think that the Prodigy at their best, you would go, fuck me, you'd put the record on and you'd be like, fucking hell, this is going to go mad live because I'm already like, you put on Omen by the Prodigy, or you put on Smack My Bitch Up, do you know what I mean? And you don't, although yes, it might be better live, but it's not like you go, oh yeah, this was really good live. And it still feels as exciting. Now, I'm not saying this record's bad, right? I don't think it's bad at all. I think, like you say, the songwriting on it's really good.
Yeah, it is.
I think, unfortunately, I have to disagree with you. I think bits of the electronic stuff, not only do I think it will date, I think it already sounds
has
a little bit
Wow.
dated, to be honest, in terms of sort of electronic music. But
You
I
know
actually
more about
think-
electronic
but
music than I
actually,
do.
I think that's all right. I think
Okay.
that's all right. I think that to me doesn't feel like it's dated. It feels like that is a stylistic decision.
Okay.
Because this is, you know, you mentioned Aphex Twin and you mentioned Silverchair. I would chuck in John Spencer Blues Explosion. There used to be a band called, if anyone remembers them, called Goat Boy, who were a Welsh three-piece band who essentially were what I've just described, which was a kind of electronic heavy version of the John Spencer Blues Explosion.
Cool.
And they had no good songs. And you go and watch them live and you go like, wow, there's like loads of bass throb and it sounds like, you know, the fucking Chemical Brothers or whatever, but he's going, you're rock and roll, you're in a sort of like weird Welsh Elvis way.
Is it Elvana?
Yeah,
Sounds like
kind of.
Elvana.
And you go, on paper, that's a fucking great idea. Please write some good songs.
Yeah.
Like Black Futures don't even need to do that.
No,
don't
they
even
they
need to.
have
They've
some
got
great songs.
Really, really good songs.
I'd say at least half a dozen on this record.
Yeah, I just feel like it's not. This might be my problem. It's not as good as I wanted it to be. It's not. But I thought I was going to put it on and go, we've got it. We've got like the great debut of the year, and I don't feel that it is the great debut of the year. Now, don't get me wrong. This feels like I'm slagging it off. Like I say, songwriting wise, and certainly their live shows are that good that's why the bar. I set the bar that high.
Yeah.
But the fact that I have set, and you know, they should probably take that as a compliment that I have set the bar that high. But unfortunately, I feel like on record, some of the gaps kind of are they're more obvious on the records.
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong because that was your experience with it, but that is not what I experienced when listening to this record. It gives me almost the drive it does seeing it live. Close
Well, I'm
enough
glad it
for
does.
me.
I'm glad it does. I just want them, I want them to be fucking. They could be. They're on Sony. They've got fucking such a brilliant idea of who they are.
Yeah.
Such a clear idea of who they are.
Yeah.
Not many bands have that these days.
Yeah.
And not many bands will be able to have the budget to do the sort of thing that Black Futures want to do. And they also have the songwriting ability to do it as well, clearly. That's why I want a fucking worldie of an album.
Fair enough. I think this is a... Yeah, I mean, I would never go, this is a phenomenal debut in like Black Peaks statues or anything like that. Having said that, can you think of any debut albums which are better than this one this year?
Puppy.
Oh, wow. I don't agree with that.
Really?
Yeah, I prefer this to Puppy, definitely. I think that Puppy album's kind of disappeared a little bit. I mean, I don't think we both really liked the Puppy debut album. I don't think it's a bad record at all. But between the two, I didn't listen to Puppy far beyond it coming out.
Right.
It didn't keep my attention for that long, and I feel like, I mean, partly that's due to when it was released. It was released back in January, if I recall. Mm-hmm. But I mean, obviously, time will tell if this keeps my interest. But I feel like it will more so than Puppy.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Let me have a look. Oh, God, while you're there, let's look for some debut albums. I can see if I'm talking, where this would sit. I'm on my iTunes right now.
We can.
We can cut this. We're not cutting fucking anything. Kirsty's Metal Hands. Does that count? No.
Oh fuck yeah! I mean,
Gift from God. I know we haven't reviewed that.
Well,
yet.
we haven't reviewed that yet.
Spoiler alert. That's pretty fucking good. That. I mean,
Kirsty's Metal Hands is a good shout. Fair play. But they're so different. It's really hard to tell. But yeah.
Throws.
I'd take Black Futures. I think Throws is brilliant, but.
Okay. What else is there? We Never Learnt to Live. That's the second album.
That's the second album.
I
mean, Fever 333 is one.
Yeah, but this is better than Fever 333. 100%. This is better than Fever 333. There's not been many actually. Has there? Not been many debut records.
Yeah, there haven't been loads
that come out this year. It's in that respect. It's up there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I am not sitting here and going, it's the best debut record of the year, but I do think it's one of them.
I'd take the Spielberg's album over it as well.
Is that? Oh yeah, it is a debut, isn't it? Yeah. I wasn't as enamoured with that as you were, but yeah.
A.A. Williams EP, does that count?
It's an EP. It's not a debut album.
All right, fair enough. So with all that in mind, Ithaca.
I prefer this.
First Ithaca.
Yeah, I think Ithaca's wonderful.
Holy Form, does that count? Oh, that was last year.
And Holy Form was last year.
You're only saying that because you prefer it to this.
Holy Form I prefer to almost everything that's come out this year. But it came out last year. So
what else is on my... Is Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill? Does that come out this year?
Oh, do I prefer this or Jagged Little Pill? I probably do more. I probably do prefer Jagged Little Pill. It's a great record, though.
Yeah, isn't it?
Fucking great record.
Really good. But listen, so yeah, there's only 2 or 3 there that I would say I do prefer.
Fair enough.
Puppy pops straight into my head straight away, probably because that is the one that I would say is probably my favourite one.
Okay.
I think the Ithaca record's fucking great as well.
Yeah, it
really
is.
Good. But overall, this is good, and I probably will listen to it again because I think the songs are really good.
Yeah.
I think it will just be one of those ones. I don't want to compare it to Pitch Shifter because we've already said how you shouldn't be doing that. But if you listen to Infotainment, I mean, fuck me, it's a weird thing to compare. I'll go and listen to early Pitch Shifter and then mid-period Pitch Shifter, and you'll notice how all of it is really dated. But particularly the kind of early 90s Infotainment and what was one for Industrial?
Was it Desensitized as well, I think.
And Desensitized are really, really dated in comparison with Deviant and www.pitchshifter.com.
I still love them, but yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, me too. I really do as well. So I think it's a hard trick to get right. And they do remind me of Radiator. They still do remind me of Radiator a little bit as well. And not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because on paper, that's Radiator were just the Chemical Brothers crossed with Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's just if you're crap.
I think they do. I think they do it very, very well. But then at the same time, I will say I am not an expert. I mean, I think we made it clear I'm not an expert when it comes to electronic music.
Yes.
But this isn't as exciting to me as say Three Trap Tigers. But I think Three Trap Tigers are doing something totally different in the electronic world. So
it's completely different.
Yeah.
Okay, but hey, listen. This is not me going like fuck Black Futures or anything at all. I just think I genuinely believe they've got a great record in them, and I just don't quite think it's this one.
No, but if this is the first, then if this is Adrenaline and we get a White Pony jump after 2 records.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Fucking hell. Yeah.
Lovely stuff.
Happy days. Yeah, because most bands do that, don't they?
Yep. Well, no. But
Anyway, it's called Never Not Nothing. It's out right now. All right. Well, that's it. We'll see you next week. Thanks very much to our friends at musicism.net for sorting us out of all this gear and being nice in general. Just being nice. Cheers. You're nice, Dan. Enjoying you nice. And you can get 10% off their courses when you go to their website and put Riot and capitals in checkout.
25%.
You probably know. 20. What did I say?
10.
You get 10. You can get 10% off. You get 10% off twice, and then half of 10 again.
That's how math works.
That's just how maths works. Anyway, big week next week for fans of UK underground bands, because we are reviewing
Hawkeyes.
Hawkeyes are back. Fuck off. I'm actually excited.
No, so am I. Yeah.
Don't laugh. That wasn't me. I wasn't being sarcastic.
No, I thought you started saying big week next week, and then realised that Hawkeyes aren't a massive band, even though they're a brilliant band. But yeah,
no. If you're someone who has been rummaging around the UK underground for the last decade, then I would imagine you've gone, new Hawkeyes.
Yeah. Hawkeyes are fantastic. And
I can't be bothered to name any other bands we're reviewing because they're not as good. Enjoy the Tool album. We'll see you next week.
Bye.